Hello, welcome back. As we think about a rapidly changing environment, many people don't really realize that the business environment, particularly in North America, has changed over the last 200 years. There's been general changes as it's gone forward. And I just throw this out to you from the standpoint of Robert Hargrove was the author of a book called Masterful Coaching, and he correctly identified three key rites of passage that American business has taken over the last 200 years. And let me just kind of share with you what those are, because it is a good picture for how things are not only changing now, but changing going into the future. The first rite of passage, as most people, I think, realize, is that our society typically early on, and by that I mean in the first 150 years of this country's existence, was agricultural. You know, people kind of grew the food that they had and put it on the table and cooked it and ate it from their farming or for their gardens or whatever. Okay. The first rite of passage happened on or about 1870. Okay, and the first rite of passage is really pictured in this way. People started to realize that, you know what, if I grow more, if I can grow more in my garden, if I can grow more on my farm, then I can not only feed myself, but I can serve it, yes, as business, I can serve it to some of the townspeople. And so people started expanding and growing more, and townspeople would come and buy some of the food for them. And so that was the first rite of passage, where it went just from growing things for myself, but it went to how can I provide for people that are in my sphere of influence, perhaps in town or whatever. So that was the first rite of passage. A lot of people don't realize that this is the change in mindset. And when we talk about a rite of passage, we're really talking about a change of mindset, a change in thinking. And this is the change in thinking that drove the Industrial Revolution in the early 20th century. Because when you start to think like that, now the whole question becomes, how am I able to grow more stuff and to sell it to more people? And that drove the Industrial Revolution, because if I can grow more, or if I can create more, or I can build more using assembly lines and such, then I can not only be better and make more money for my family, but for those that I associate with. So this first rite of passage was a change of thinking that actually drove the Industrial Revolution around the 1900s. Well, the second rite of passage actually started to come on the scene about 40 or 50 years later. And it was driven by the simple fact that now we've gotten to the point where we have assembly lines and we can make a lot of things and we can go out and sell them. But now, how do I differentiate myself from other people? Because automakers, you had different automakers that were on the scene building cars. You had different aircraft makers that were building airplanes, and that was true in almost any industry. Well, now, how do I differentiate myself? And about the time of 1950, 1960, you started hearing a lot about quality. That's where Six Sigma started to come on the scene. Because now, if I can do it at a better quality, you'll buy my stuff instead of this person's stuff. So the second rite of passage was one where people started to thinking about quality. And that's also where the process of TQM, Total Quality Management, came on the scene. And a lot of businesses had a complete program of quality where people came together just to talk about and to strategize for quality alone. One of the interesting points on that, a lot of the manufacturers found out that the best bet was not to put the quality assessors at the end of the line, but at the beginning. So you could ensure the quality going onto the assembly line was what you needed. So the second rite of passage happened about the mid-20th century. Okay? And this rite of passage was one about really focusing on quality and how we make it. The third rite of passage happened about 20 years ago, at the beginning of the 21st century. the environment had changed. In fact, we know the internet was in place. A lot of online aspects were in place. A lot of these kind of things were ready. And this rite of passage was a little bit more ambiguous than the other two. A good way to think about this, and Robert Hargrove said it very nicely in his book, it can be characterized as companies had to start being a culture of learning. They came together to find out, what don't we already know? What do we need to know? What do we need to know better than we know today? And there was this aspect of really bringing and building the quality and the learning aspect into the culture of your organization. And so that one was a little bit more vague, but the idea is simply this. Quality at that point, start of the 21st century, is no longer a differentiator. You cannot compete if you don't have it. But the bottom line is, if you have quality, that doesn't win the day for you. Because guess what? 3 of your competitors have a similar level of quality, because that focus was so strong for a lot of years. So this third rite of passage was almost a mindset of, how do we come together to learn what we don't know? To increase our knowledge and our awareness of not only what we're doing and what we're building, but how we're going about doing that. So these were the 3 rite of passages that were key defining changes in the business environment over the last 200 years. But here's the thing I want to just leave with you. As you think about these rites of passage, or this change of thinking that needs to happen, I challenge you with this thought. What do you think the next one's going to be? It is very interesting that I was speaking to a group of people a short while back, and one of them said, what do you think the next one's going to be? And I simply looked at him and I said, well, let me respond in a coaching perspective. I looked at him and I said, what do you think it might be? And they actually talked a little bit, and what they came up with, and it may be right, it may not be right, we'll see. But he said, things are getting away from people so much that I think the next rite of passage is going to be where businesses start to come back and connect with people better. And I said, who knows? That may be true. My point is this. Going into the future, the businesses that are going to be really successful and achieve radical results are going to be businesses that can kind of see down the road a little bit. Wayne Gretzky, I think I said on a previous video a while back, Wayne Gretzky used to say, I don't skate to the puck, I skate to where the puck's going to be. And we almost have to have that mindset when we're looking at this. So what do you think that next rite of passage might be? What does your company need to do, maybe even differently than it does right now, in order to be ready for it? I leave that with you for this week.